Tonight we're going to talk about powers and exponents. Okay, we have learned how to write the prime factorization for 8. To do that, we use our factor tree. We start with 8. 2 factors of 8, 2 times 4. 2 is prime, however, 4 is not, so we continue factoring the 4 until we get all primes. And our prime factorization of 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. What do you notice about our answer? Do you notice that there are 3 of the 2's? A product of identical factors can be written using an exponent and a base. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay, a base. You need to go ahead and write this down in your notes. Our prime factorization of 8 was 2 times 2 times 2. What factor do you see? You see the 2. That is your base, or big number. The base is the number that is used as a factor. Then you have an exponent. An exponent indicates how many times the base is used as a factor. Up here in our prime factorization of 8, how many times do you see the 2? You see it 3 times. That is our exponent. So our base is the big number, and the exponent is written to the right side of the base, and it's written smaller and higher, a little bit above the base. So we want to identify which numbers are the base and which are the exponents. Okay, let's take our first example. We have 3 to the 3rd power, or 3 cubed. Okay, the big number is the base. Think of the two b's. Big starts with a B, base starts with a B. And then our exponent is the little 3. This means that our factor is 3, and we multiply it by itself 3 times. We write 3 times 3 times 3. For 100, the base or the factor is 100, and the exponent is 10. That means we multiply 100 times itself 10 times. 100 times 100 times 100 times 100, and so on 10 times. Now, what about this one? This is just 5. There is no exponent, is there? The exponent is actually invisible, because there really is an exponent. Remember, we write the numbers, the factors, however many times the exponent says. So if I have an exponent of 1, how many times am I going to write the 5? Just once. It's just plain 5. Okay? So even though you don't see the exponent, it's really a 1. It's just invisible. It's the invisible 1 exponent. Okay, let's talk about numbers expressed using exponents are called powers. We're going to talk about the proper way to say this. If you have this power right here, the proper way to say that in words is 2 to the 5th power. 2 is the base. 2 to the 5th power. The next example would be 3 to the 2nd power, or more commonly we say 3 squared. Whenever you have a power of 2, you can call it squared. I know you've worked a lot with area, finding the area of things. You've had 3 inches squared, 5 feet squared. You always use squared for area. That's because it has a power of 2. Then our last example would be 10 to the 3rd power, or you might hear it called cubed, 10 cubed. And we use cubed a lot when we're talking about volume. The volume of the cylinder is 32 milliliters cubed. Okay, that's talking about volume. Alright, writing expressions in exponential form. An exponential form means we're going to rewrite these expressions using exponents. We're going to write it with a power. Okay, so our first example is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. To write it as a power, we look at the factor. What is the factor being repeated? It is a 3. That is our base, our big number. And then our exponent is going to be how many times it was written. How many times do we see it? We see it 4 times. That is our exponent, or our power. So we would say this, read this as 3 to the 4th power. Oops, Sorry about that. 3 to the 4th power. Our next example shows factors of 4. So our base, or our big number, would be a 4. And what would our power be? Well, how many 4s are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So writing in exponential form, it would read 4 to the 5th power. This is much shorter than writing it out. This is kind of like a shortcut way. Using exponents is a shortcut way of writing numbers or writing math or repeated multiplication. Okay, go ahead and stop the video. Work the next 3 examples on your own. Once you have your answers, resume the video and check to see if you're correct. Okay, let's see how you did. 5 times 5 times 5. Did you get 5 to the 3rd power or 5 cubed? What about 20? This is the 1. Did you remember? It had the invisible power of 1. So this would be 20 to the 1st power. And then 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. That's a lot of 1s to be saying and a lot of 1s to be writing. So let's shorten it. 1 to the 7th power. 1 is the factor that's being repeated. There are 7 of them, so 7 becomes our exponent. Now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to write each in expanded form and then evaluate. Expanded form, when you expand something, it gets bigger. If you blow a balloon, it expands, it gets bigger. Well, that's what we're going to do here. Instead of writing the shortcut, we're going to write it out the long way. So we have 4 squared, or 4 to the 2nd power. Our base is the 4. That means that is the factor that's being repeated. And the exponent, which is the 2, tells us how many times it repeats. It repeats 2 times. So I write 2 4s, and then the operation that goes in between them is multiplication. So 4 times 4. 4 squared, or 4 to the 2nd power, equals 4 times 4. Now we need to evaluate. Evaluate means to solve it. It's not 4 times 2 because we just wrote it out in expanded form. It's 4 times 4, which is 16. And there we go. Okay, let's look at the next problem. 2 to the 4th power. Do you think that 2 to the 4th power equals 8? Hopefully you don't, because we need to expand it. 2 to the 4th power is the big number 2 written 4 times and multiplied together. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. 2 to the 4th power equals 16. Go ahead and pause the video, expand the last 3 examples, evaluate them, solve them, then resume the video, come back and check your answers. Okay, let's see how you did. 8 squared, or 8 to the 2nd power. Did you say 16 was your answer? Wrong, it's 64. It's 8 repeated twice and multiplied together. 8 times 8 is 64. 2 times 3 is not 6. It's 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 8. And 5 cubed does not equal 15. It's 5 times 5 times 5, which equals 125.